This week on Video Game Takeout, in honor of the soon-to-be-released Contra 4, we take a look at all 3 Contra games that have come out for portable systems so far. First up, Operation C for the Game Boy. Operation C was released for the Game Boy in 1991, but just like Castlevania, it was remade exclusively in Europe as part of the Konami Game Boy Collection Volume 1 for the Game Boy Color. It's easy to miss this game in the menu because back in the 90s, European Contra games were renamed Probotector and had some of their content changed to be less violent. One strange thing though is that in all the other Probotector games, you played as a robot, but in this version you play as humans just like in Contra, but the enemies are still robots just like in all the other Probotectors. For some reason, the Europeans stayed with the name and the content change all the way until Contra Legacy of War came out for the PlayStation and the Saturn. But enough of all that, let's get down to the game at hand, Operation C. The game has 5 levels that are loosely based on the levels from Super C. There are 3 side-scrolling levels and 2 overhead levels. All the levels are good, but I prefer the side-scrolling ones. One of the new features in this game was the ability to combine 2 weapons into one. For example, let's say you have the spread gun and you pick up the homing gun. It doesn't just switch them like in the older games, it combines them and becomes a homing spread gun. Part of the fun is picking up new weapons just to see what the combinations do. Plus, some of the guns really help you get through the tougher levels. My favorite is the double spread gun. Another thing I liked about this game is that it had the old school Contra music. The original Contra had a really great soundtrack, so hearing it again here was just fine with me. Now, being a Contra game usually means at least one thing, that the game is going to be really hard. I actually didn't think this game was as hard as the console games. I mean, yeah, it's hard, but the levels are short, so it's not too bad to start over. Plus, it's hard in a good way. The controls are tight, and the enemies are never cheap. I would say this game is hard, but not frustrating. When you die, you know it was all your own fault, and you can't wait to get in there and try it again. One last thing. Contra is famous for its codes, and this game has 2 that you can enter before the game starts. The first is up, up, down, down, left, right, select, start. This enables the level select in the black and white version of the game. The remake has the level select enabled from the start without the code. The second code is up 4 times, down 4 times, and select start. This is the code that gives you 10 lives instead of the normal 3. Overall, I'd say this game is definitely one to check out. It's an original game that borrows heavily from the original Contra and Super C. Usually, I would say this level of copying is a bad thing, but this game is a lot of fun and it does add some new things. Plus, Contra really doesn't need a radical makeover. Up next, Contra 3: The Alien Wars. This game was released in 1994 for the Game Boy by Factor 5. You may know Factor 5 from games like the Rogue Squadron series or the recent PS3 title Lair. In any event, this game is a port of the Super Nintendo game of the same name. The main difference between this and the SNES version seems to be the normal downsizing that comes with all handheld games, and the removal of the 4th level. It's also lost the ability to hold 2 weapons at once. This game supports Super Game Boy enhancement, or at least it says it does. I honestly really couldn't see or hear much difference except that the Contra logo was red on the title screen. So let's get into the game. First off, the game has 4 difficulties. I'll be playing on the easiest since I'm not very good at Contra, and it's faster to review this way. The first thing I noticed when playing the game is that the character is much more detailed looking, which is good, but then I started moving and the controls felt much stiffer than the previous game. That's when it all started going downhill. The controls are not the worst ever, but they're certainly not as good as the source material. Honestly, I don't even think they're as good as the original NES game from 1988. But the controls are only part of the problem. The look of the game appears to be an upgrade at first, but I soon realized that it only looks better if you're standing still, and in Contra, that's almost never. Besides that, the game is just kinda boring. No 2-player option, boring graphics, and downsized everything makes for a pretty boring experience. Sure, it's not the worst game out there, but it's not near being one of the best either. It's middle of the road, which is fine, except that the game it's based on is so much more than middle of the road. This game epitomizes the bad Game Boy port. So many people shy away from the Game Boy because of games like these. Games that act like they're the same as the console version and fall way short of the mark. The SNES version of the game was great, and this version is a subpar port that really isn't worth your time. Let's see if the GBA port of the same game has suffered as badly. Contra Advance: The Alien Wars EX is yet another remake of the SNES classic. This version has been changed significantly for what I assume is a limitation in the hardware. All of the top-down stages have been replaced with side-scrolling stages from the Genesis game Contra Hardcore. Don't get me wrong, Contra Hardcore is a great game, but the stages don't match up well with the stages from Alien Wars, and the graphics are much better too, so the feeling from level to level is very inconsistent. Again, just like in the Game Boy game, the ability to use a second weapon has been removed. This is really frustrating because if you accidentally pick up a weapon, you're stuck with it unless you can get back to the one you dropped. Okay, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I'm not very good at Contra. The first 2 games I was able to do because they were much slower. This game is much faster, and your reaction time needs to be much faster to keep up with it. Which is fine if you're into that kind of thing, but I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. But the speed isn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that the port is zoomed in too far, and some of the environments have been made very slightly smaller too, making a game that is much harder. This game was totally remade for the GBA. Looking at the two side by side, it's easy to see how they shrunk everything down to try to make it fit on the smaller screen. Also, the graphics aren't nearly as good and are a lot brighter than the original. The brightness gives the game a whole different feeling. It's not dark and post-apocalyptic anymore, now it feels more like Smash TV. Overall, I'd say the game is decent, but it feels rushed. It's definitely better than the Game Boy version, but it's also a lot harder, and it's still got a lot of problems. If it were me in the store and I had to decide if I was going to pick it up or not, I'd pass. But if you're a big Contra fan, maybe this one might be worth a look. Just don't expect the console experience on the go, because that's not what this game offers. It's close, but no cigar. So looking back, for me personally, the first game was the only one that I found to be fun. But to be honest, I'm not the biggest Contra fan. Don't get me wrong, I like them, but I'm not good enough at them to really love them. Some people may find the other 2 games a bit more fun than I did, but that's the nature of reviewing something. Personally, I have much higher hopes for the new Contra 4 that will be released in just a few days. I have a feeling that'll be far and away the best portable Contra out there. Well, that wraps up another week. As always, you can catch all the past episodes on the website, videogametakeout.blogspot.com. You can also see all the new shows there every Monday. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me at videogametakeout@gmail.com. And be sure to check back with us next Monday for another handheld game review. Until then, I'm Ben. Thanks for watching, and have a great week.